Welcome aboard the Strange Express. My name is Dr. Scherzo Stantio. On today's journey, we will meet a man who wants to introduce you to a friend of his. Our protagonist, Mike, will share his story with you in just a moment. But now, I believe the engineer just signaled that we are ready to leave the station. So, let's get started. Hello, YouTube. I have a strange story that I want to share with you, and I also want to offer you an opportunity to visit me and my new friend, and perhaps partake in our most amazing fellowship. My name is Mike, and I have a friend, who we can call Henry, who operates an online business. Henry and I have known each other for a number of years. I'd been working with another company when Henry had contacted me back in early 2018 and offered me a full partnership in his business if I cared to join him. Now, I have a good reputation for being able to pull off deals that others say are impossible, so he knew that I'd be a real asset to his company, and I saw an opportunity to be my own boss and do what I want to do. Now, his business was doing well, but I knew with my contacts and persuasive abilities that I could take it to the next level and beyond. Now skip forward to August of 2019. Things were really going well, and Henry and I decided to get together with a few of the other key players and talk about future plans and look at the possibility of bringing in a few more people to our growing company. We set a meeting for the week of August the 12th. I was to meet Henry at his home prior to the others arriving so we could solidify plans and create presentations. Henry's home is in northwest Wyoming, close to the Idaho border, in the middle of nowhere. I'd flown into Jackson and picked up my rental car and called Henry to let him know that I was in Wyoming. It was rather late on a Saturday night, but Henry insisted that I come to his house that night. I verified his address and put it in the GPS and was on my way. After about 30 minutes, the GPS was announcing that I had arrived at my destination. I looked around and there was no house in sight. I checked the GPS again and clearly indicated that I was at the right location. I called Henry and told him, "Houston, we have a problem." I explained to him that the GPS indicated that I was in front of his house, but I could not see anything but mountains and trees, but nothing that looked like a house. We verified again that I had the right address, but we were stumped as to why the GPS had not taken me to the right place. Henry was able to tell me over the phone how to get to his house. We wrote it off as something wrong with the rental car's electronics, as they were acting strange. The radio didn't work, the window wiper would come on randomly, the trunk even popped open once while I was driving down the road. And to make it worse, it seemed to be affecting my watch and my phone too. So, I finally got to Henry's house and met his wife Linda for the first time. They showed me to the guest room and I unpacked my luggage and got a shower. When I came back out, Henry then took me around to the back of their house, where he had some really nice reclining lawn chairs. I guess Henry was an amateur astronomer as he had a telescope and a camera mounted back there. He told me that he'd been watching and videoing some type of meteor shower that was going on at the time. I sat down on one of the lawn chairs and gazed up into the sky. I had never seen so many stars before. I guess it's either the air pollution or the light pollution, but where I live, you never see more than a couple of dozen stars. And here I could see hundreds, or possibly thousands of stars. I asked Henry what time it was, as my watch was still on a fritz. Henry said he wasn't sure as he didn't have a watch, but he thought it was a little after 3 a.m. I relaxed in a chair, gazing at the amazing stars. The next thing I knew, Henry was yelling at me, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" I drifted off to sleep, and so I said, "No, I'm afraid I was too busy watching the backs of my eyelids." "What did you see? A flying saucer?" I said this jokingly. "I think it was. It was oval-shaped and it passed right over us. I can't believe you didn't see it." Henry was very clearly excited and was talking very fast, but I got the impression that he was convinced that whatever he saw had landed nearby. Now, I've never given too much thought to UFOs. If someone were to press me, I guess I would have said that I didn't believe in them. After all, this is the 21st century. We have all kinds of sophisticated hardware, radar, and everybody carries their own high-definition camera right on their person. So, I was convinced that if they were real, somebody would have a nice clear photo or some definitive evidence of their existence. I mean, after all, when we went to the moon, what did we do? We planted our flag for all to see, and when we left behind a ton of hardware, refuse, and even some poop bags. Hope no aliens accidentally step in one of those. That'll be a close encounter they won't soon forget. If we have been visited by space aliens for years, why can't somebody produce some hard evidence that they have been here? I'm telling you this so you'll understand my perspective at the time. As the morning wore on, events would occur that would challenge that perspective. I told Henry that I was sorry that I'd missed it, but apparently I was more tired than I realized. So I thought I'd go to bed. Then Henry said that he wanted to drive down the road to see if it did land nearby, and he wanted me to go with him. I politely declined as I was still groggy, and the thought of the nice, cool bedsheets brought a smile to my face, thinking how nice it would feel about now. Henry then asked me if I would give him the keys to my rental car, as he would need to move it in order to back his truck out. About this time, Henry's wife came out of the house. She had heard Henry yelling at me about the UFO, and it must have woke her up too. I told Henry I'd go move my car while he explained to Linda what the yelling was all about. After moving the car, I found that I was more awake and decided I would ride with Henry. As it turned out, Linda was going too. I know that I did not expect to see anything, but I was curious. So we all three piled into Henry's pickup. His truck had one of those big cabs that had 4 doors, so I sat in the back while Henry and Linda sat up front, with Henry driving. We drove up the road a couple of miles, and we could see a faint glow in the sky that was back in the woods over on the left side of the road. It was not too far ahead of us, but as we approached it, it suddenly went dark, and the only lights were the stars and the truck's lights. I'd seen the moon earlier that evening, and it was about 3/4 full, but I think it had already set by this time, as I did not see it in the sky at all. Henry eased the truck over to the side of the road and stopped, turning off the lights. "So, did we get out and look?" I asked. No one answered me, and Henry opened the 2 front windows all the way, and then he said, "Listen." I expected to hear crickets or some other country sound, but what I did hear was a cross between a hum and a rumble. And again it was coming over from the left side, out in the woods. Henry opened his door and stepped out, leaving his keys in the ignition, and Linda exited the truck over on her side. I mumbled to myself, "I guess we will get out and take a look." At this, Henry said, "Why don't you two wait here? I'll go in and take a look. If it appears safe, I'll come back and get you." I was actually okay with this plan, as I was getting a little nervous, having seen the glowing lights in the woods, and now hearing the weird mechanical noise that was still humming. I kept telling myself that it was probably just some experimental military aircraft, and our biggest danger was probably that we would be ordered at gunpoint to leave the area immediately. Anyway, both Linda and I nodded acknowledgement to his suggestion, and Henry disappeared into the dark. I asked Linda if they thought to bring a flashlight. She said that they did, and Henry actually had one, and there's a spare one in the glove compartment. I retrieved the one from the glove compartment, and I checked it and confirmed it was in working order. I then asked her how long we should wait before we went in to look for Henry. She replied she thought we should give him at least 5 minutes. About a minute after she said that, we saw Henry running back toward us, flashlight on, and it was swinging back and forth as he ran back with it in his hand. He was mostly out of breath, but he gasped that there was a flying saucer in the woods. "Did you see any of the occupants?" I asked. Henry said that he had not seen any signs of life, just a spacecraft. We went into the woods, and Henry whispered that the flying saucer was just ahead. Just as he said this, I caught sight of it. It was much larger than I had anticipated. There were no legs on the craft. It sat flat on the ground. It appeared to be about 20 feet high and at least 50 foot across. I started walking slowly around it and noted that it was not a smooth metal finish, but had more of an organic look to it. I laughed to myself as I imagined the headlines. "Earth invaded by aliens in giant white squash." Only it wasn't white. It was nearly transparent. And the wiring, well, not really wiring. It appeared to be more like veins, as you could see them through the outer shell. And the wires or veins were pulsating, like the flying saucer was a living thing. For a moment I thought that perhaps the ship was the alien. But this thought was interrupted by the sounds of screams. I guess that my wandering around and looking at the amazing technology that I had gotten separated from Henry and Linda. I took off in a run to where the sound had came from. I aimed the beam of my light forward to the area where the screams had come from. That is when I came to an immediate halt. I do not know how to convey the terror that I felt at that moment. I wanted to turn and run the other direction, but I was frozen. I was afraid that if I tried to retreat, the thing that was in the path before me would turn around and see me. As I mentioned earlier, I had not been a believer in UFOs. Now, I've seen some things online, and while most people talk about the Greys or the reptilians, this thing didn't seem to fit either category, or any other category that I know of. It stood about 10 foot tall. It had a somewhat normal human-shaped body, 2 hands, 2 feet, 1 head. Then it happened. It turned and looked at me. No enlarged brain cavity. Its head was very round. Its ears seemed small for the size of its head, and it appeared to have one hole in the center of its face that served as its nose. Then there were those teeth. Those teeth. Fangs, I believe would be the correct designation. There were lots of them, and they appeared very sharp. I don't think there are any vegans on its home world. Its eyes were odd, too. Its left eye was higher on its face than its right eye, and the left eye was almost twice as large as the right eye. Maybe if you remember that old cartoon, Bill the Cat, you'll have an idea of what its eyes looked like. Only this was in real flesh and blood, I presume. The creature then took 2 steps forward and grabbed me. I did not resist. I was still frozen in fear. I don't know if it did something to me or if I just passed out naturally. But I remember I could not distinguish objects for a moment. And at first everything was red. Then the red turned to a silver color. And then the silver turned to black. And I was out. And the next time I was conscious, I was lying on the ground. I immediately saw that a giant alien was nearby, and I felt a strong urge to start crying. But I did not do so, as I saw that I was still alive, and I was resolved to stay that way. I'm a professional negotiator, and I knew I would find a way out of this situation. I will not bore you with the details, but it was slow going at first, and there were several times that a certain creature was about to kill me. But finally, Bill and I worked it all out. That's right, I called him Bill. You know, after Bill the Cat. Bill is really not such a bad guy after all. Well, I think he's a guy. I'm almost positive he's a guy. Just to keep things simple, we'll say he's a guy. He was sent to survey planets to find possible planets for colonization, or sources of food, or other resources that are needed on their home worlds. One interesting thing that I found was that platinum is plentiful where he comes from. And he had quite a supply on his ship, and he will be rewarding me for the valuable assistance that I'm providing him. Now, he would like to meet more people, but he does not want to create a world panic either. So if you would like to come and visit us, we'll be happy to have you. Bill says he will be honored to have you over for dinner. Bill wants to keep this meet and eat somewhat hush-hush, so we only want to reveal the location of those who will be actually attending. We can make arrangements for small groups, 3 maximum. Just get back to me and let me know, and I can arrange the details. Oh, you're probably wondering about Henry and Linda. Well, they're the first to attend one of Bill's banquets. That Bill, he's quite a guy. He really has a warm spot for humans. Speaking of eating, I'd better make myself scarce and beat the bushes for something to feed Bill, as it's getting to be that time again, and he has a peculiar taste for food. When he is hungry, he's likely to put anything in his mouth. So, if you're interested in being part of the festivities, just put a note in the comments and Doc will let me know. Well now, it looks like our little journey for today is about to end, as we are approaching your station. I sure hope Mike will be alright, and that his bargain with Bill doesn't come back to bite him. I fear that the warm spot that Bill has for humans may be in his stomach. Just let me know if there are any takers to attend one of the meals. I trust that you won't become the main course. I thank you for taking this little journey with me, and I hope to see you again soon. Now, to paraphrase Roy Rogers, happy rails to you. Ha ha ha.